Hi, Dr. Parra. Welcome to the International Dentist Podcast. It's great to have you here with us today.
Hello, hello. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
It's an honor for me too. Long time without talking. So it's great to be able to catch up for a little bit.
Yeah. I follow you on social media and I can see more or less what you're doing, but it's been a while since we last spoke. Yeah, really.
The social media helps us feeling connected, right? And this is a great tool. I want to start our conversation asking you, why did you choose the United States or as a country to develop your dental career?
Well, I guess that doesn't have a simple answer or just one answer. It's a lot of factors, and I think it developed a little bit through that time. So maybe the reasons I had in the beginning are not the same reasons I have currently. Definitely a big influence was the mentors I had in like back in Spain. They were trained. Many of them were trained in the U.S. Uh, and since dental school, I like periodontics, and the Department of Periodontics was led by people training specifically the Tufts in Boston. So that was a big, it was very important for me to meet these people and see what they did, how much they knew, and the passion they had for specifically periodontics. In my case, from that, I applied for residency in the US, and that's not an easy process. I guess we can talk a little bit more about it later. And it's not a short process, and it's not a cheap process neither. But once in residency in the US, my plan was to come back to Spain. My family was in Spain and still currently is in Spain. My friends, everyone. I didn't know anyone in the US. So my plan was to just train and come back to Spain like my mentors or the people I knew had done, right? Most of the people that were trained in the US, which I knew they were back in Spain practicing or teaching. But once in residency, start meeting the people, start seeing how things are here, and also see how things are back home, maybe. And you see that maybe here there's a little in the US there's a little more chances to practice, and also if you want to be in academia, definitely there's more chances to teach. And the idea of staying in the US started to develop. And in the beginning was like, oh, let me see if I can stay maybe for 1 year, let's see. Then you are able to get into, to apply, get the job. And it's been like 5 years since I finished the residency, and I've been here 5 years. So far, I'm happy. Definitely I'm going to be longer. I don't know for how long, but definitely longer, because I think here, dentistry, specifically periodontics in this country, has a lot to offer for us, for the educator, and for the dentist itself.
And I think that's not uncommon for a lot of people. They come with an initial idea, right? And then some goals maybe of just doing their program and then goodbye, going back home. And then things change down the road. What things do you think happened that make you change your mind? Is there anything in particular that you say, it was that thing or that advice I got that made me change my mind?
Not well. I had some friends back in Spain. And I was in contact still. I was going back and forth, and many people were telling me, dentistry is not great here. The model is a little different than the model in Spain, or in Europe is a little different than the model of dentistry in the US, at least currently. Although here in the US it may be changing, but definitely there was a big difference. And I feel in Spain you're like more a slave of your work. You have to work, people 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. and you have to produce a lot to really make a living. I think here you can enjoy, or I feel I can enjoy a little more dentistry, and I realize that. And definitely academia in Europe, or at least in Spain, I don't think you can make a living from academia. Definitely here you can. So as I was in residency, I was seeing my faculty, and I appreciated what they were doing, and I started realizing, oh, maybe I want to be in academia. And I think probably the US is the only place where you can be dedicated to academia and not starve, right?
What do you think was like what you like about academia? Because that was, I guess, not in your mind at all when you came, right? That's something that you started to get interested here.
Yeah, I always wanted to maybe teach 1 day a week, maybe have my own office, and just go once a week to academia. But the more I was involved with, with residency, with colleagues, with students, the more I realized I liked it. Also, being in university is an easy way to get your residency, to your visa. So that I'm not saying that was a reason, but that was a plus, right? And but I really like the interaction with other departments and other people, which I think in private practice you can. And when I was in Spain, I practiced for 2.5 years as a general dentist, and I can see, depending, of course, on the practice, on the job you are, but you can be a little bit isolated. You can feel a little isolated within your own world. But I think definitely, like in academia, is the opposite. You meet all these other faculty from the same department, from other departments, all the students, and you keep just learning. So I think it's easier to learn in academia, to grow professionally, and help others grow, rather than being in private practice. I'm not saying you cannot grow, you cannot learn, you cannot mentor people, but I think it's different. And I think academia it gives you the tools and the possibility of doing that.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And you talked a little bit at the beginning about the challenges that you had with the application, even like before even coming here. Do you remember what was that process?
Yeah, well, I remember when one of my mentors, I was saying, specifically, I remember I was in a lecture by Jose Nart, and he had just come back to Spain and from Tufts. So he had some pictures from Tufts, talked about the university here in Boston, and I went home, started looking at money, tuition, right? I start making numbers, talking to my dad, and that's probably because when I was in dental school, 4th year dental school. So that's in Spain is 5 years. So my 4th year in dental school, talking to my family, but it's a lot of money. And compared to other countries, even more money. So it's a lot of money in the US. So compared to Europe or Spain, is even a lot more money because education is cheaper over there. So the idea start forming there, but starting counting them to the pennies, and from there you have to really you're not in the US, so you're not trained in the US, so you have to give a plus. You have to try to establish a network, start meeting people in the academia, fly to the US ahead of time, visit programs. You don't know how the application process goes, so send emails, but then emails usually they take forever to answer, or they get lost, so then you have to talk on the phone, and maybe you're not used to you may know English, but you're not used to Massachusetts English or Texas English or Alabama English, right? All the accents, so it's tricky. And then get all the paperwork ready, apply ahead of time. So the process was like, since I said, okay, I'm ready, or I want to really apply to the US, until I got into my residency was 2 years. I applied probably 2010, or started preparing everything until I got in 2012. So it's a long process, takes time, and takes money, because as I said, I came to the US twice actually before getting accepted, to meet people, interviews. So it's not an easy process, but it's worth it.
Absolutely. Was that part of the process, trying to just network with people that you knew that they were here, like that came to other schools? So what else was part of that network process you did over those years?
So first you have to, is more difficult being in Europe or outside the country, is difficult to really travel and see programs, right? You can probably, that's what I did eventually. I went and see 5 programs on a trip. But first you're going to plan, you need to plan. So you start looking up who studied in this school, who studied in that school. Okay, people that maybe are in Spain or in the same city or in the same region, then contact them, meet with them. Or maybe I know someone that didn't study there but had very good friends that studied, or people or new people that studied there. So you start establishing like a list of programs. You also look online. There's several pages that may tell you your programs, more or less the tuition, who's the director of the program, how many procedures do. So you start clicking, checking, asking people. You say, okay, East Coast, West Coast. In my case, I decided to go more towards the East Coast. At the end, you have to make a line, right? And say, there's so many programs. You say, okay, East Coast. And from them, start marking, start making a list. Okay, so then these programs, I selected 5 programs. Try to send emails. Try to meet people, or at least through email, that were on those programs. and then eventually make a plan, a trip to just go and visit. Not even during, at least in my case, it was not even during interview time. We were just in the spring, a little earlier before interviews, went there, visited all the schools. And from there, once I knew them, once they knew me, then I applied and I went for interviews, and eventually everything turned out good. But definitely, I think getting to meet the people and letting the people know you, it's helpful because, and now probably nowadays with COVID, you can see, right? You're meeting a lot of people online, which is cool, is very convenient, but it's not the same as meeting one-on-one in person, right? So I think that's important to really meet the person and get them to know, because emails or phone calls, they can be misleading, and I know it now. And now when we are receiving applicants for our residency program, they send emails, but there's a fine line between showing interest and being too much, or trying to pretend too much, right? So it's difficult.
And now that you're involved in that process of actually be the one interviewing, like you once were in that position, and you kind of try to navigate the system based on the advices you receive. Now that you're on the other side of the table, what do you normally see in residents, or what are the kinds of behaviors that are desirable, or the ones that you feel like somebody could work on to develop as a better or stronger candidate?
Definitely, if they can, a class is always developing research or any extra curricular activities, rather than, at least we have 3 positions for Perio. We received last year probably like over 100 applications. So if you don't have something that stands out, if you just went through your dental school, graduated right now, and apply, we won't even call you for interview, because we only have 3 positions. Last year I think we called either 16 or 18 people. So that's the people we call. So definitely you have to have a background on something else. If you have publications, that's perfect, but it doesn't really necessarily have to be publication. Definitely recommendation letters help a little bit, in the sense if me or other of the faculty involved know the person which are making the recommendation letters, that's important. So that's why it's important to really meet the people within the program, or maybe an alumni or someone in the program, because if we know personally someone that's making a recommendation letter, that may help. And then during the interview, I think some people may think that we don't, but we feel when someone is not telling the truth, or is not being real, or of course, sometimes you cannot reach 100%, but there's cases which are obvious, or the person is trying to pretend what they are not. So I think just to be simple, be easy, just be who you are, tell what you do, and show that you eventually will be 3 years, or depending on the residency, 2 or 3 years, 4 years, will be interacting. So you have to be an easy person to get along with the faculty and with your other co-residents. So that's important. But in the end, it's just be yourself, and be prepared also by either by meeting alumni, faculty, preparing a little the interview, and but there's not rocket science in the end. It's what it is.
Yeah, that's very much true. And you talked about extracurricular activities, and that's something that I'm curious because here in the United States, they're very strong on extracurricular activities and all sort of things that are involved besides just study dentistry or even being a dentist. Do you recall in Spain that it was common that students or dentists are involved in a lot of extracurricular activities, or not as much?
I think what I remember, I'm pretty sure it's not as much as here. Here they are a little, because here they go through college, right? So dental students go through 4 years of college, 4 years of dental school. In most of countries, actually, probably Canada, no, but the rest of countries is you go directly after high school, usually to dental school, and it maybe 5 or 6 years. So here they are a little more seasoned, a little more mature. So, and in many times they have done some research before, or they have been working in a lab, because getting into dental school is challenging. So they have a little bit of lab background, many of them. And since they are more mature, I think sometimes through dental school, they try to do some research. But a lot of the research is in college. What I see in the application is through college, which in our case, we didn't have college. So what I did is when I finished dental school, I did like a 1 year part-time fellowship in periodontics, so that it has a little bit my extracurricular activities. And then while doing that, I had a couple of publications, doing some research in the department, so that helped a little bit. So, and I was not just a fresh graduate. I had worked like 2.5 years, which I think that that helps. So there's very good candidates fresh out of school, but if you sometimes if you wait a couple of years, get some experience, or more publications or more extracurricular activities, or then that may help also in getting accepted. But the opposite way may also happen. If you wait too much, we've also seen the case. We have people that maybe are a little older, which that's fine, but maybe we think, oh, the average age of the residents is like late 20s, 30. So now you're gonna put this 50-year-old person with all this experience with this group. Will they behave well? Will they match well? Will this 50-year-old person be willing to follow orders from or not orders, or to follow instructions from someone younger, maybe with even less experience with them? Or this person has already acquired several habits, maybe good or maybe bad habits. Will you be able to correct? So sometimes it's not good to wait too long, right, to go into residency.
Yeah, and I think you can show that in your interview, as you talked at the beginning about being honest, being simple, being, I guess, transparent in who you are, and showing that you have the character to get along well with colleagues, which I think in the practice of dentistry is the same, right? You're going to end up working with the people that you feel like you can get along well, that behave and in a way that you behave, and communicate in the way that you communicate. So I think the expectations are kind of similar, right, when looking for residents.
Yeah, and it happened a little bit with us. No, when we were doing residency, we worked together because we knew how we were, simple, easygoing. We were hard workers. We would do the job, right? You don't want easygoing people and just chilling all day, right? But at the end, you go with who you get along, right? And that's
Absolutely. So once you got accepted and you started the program, what was the first challenge that you encountered, like either social challenge, cultural challenge when you came to the US, or academic, that you remember that really was difficult?
Well, in my case, and probably many people were struggling a little bit with tuition. Tuition is with you have a budget, so that's a struggle, and always the budget is more, in the ends being more than what you plan for. That was a big thing. So I had to be careful with what I did. Regarding the culture, I have to say that specifically in my case, Boston, the culture is pretty open-minded. You have a lot of international people, so that was good. Even in the program, we had a lot of international people from all over the world. So that made it easy, and people were in my situation, in a similar situation as mine. We were new, they were foreign, so that really helped. It was a lot of work. Work every day, focused on the specialty, in this case stereo. But since I really liked it, I didn't have any hard moments or breakdown moments. Probably I felt more the difference when I came to Texas, because I think the culture is a little different in Texas. Still better than I thought or than I may expect, but I think the culture in Texas is a little different than what we may think in Europe or in other parts of the world. But
what was the main difference in Texas that you noticed between, I guess, Europe or Massachusetts, whatever you want to compare it with?
Yeah, so when you come at the beginning, you don't know the people, so you don't feel that much of a difference, right? One of the main things, definitely, personally, in what situation of life you are, right? In residency, you're put together with 20, 30, 50 people which are in the same situation as you. So it's very easy to really meet people, and you feel for the others and get along pretty good. Here is different. No, you go to a place where you don't know anyone, like in my case, Massachusetts, but the people are already settled. Everyone is having their life. Everyone has a family or their friends, their kids. So first, slowly you get to know the people, which is fine. But then you realize a little bit the southern, a little more conservative mentality, and a little more of the deep America. I wouldn't say deep because Dallas is a big city. You have a lot of mentality, but you have very people which are proud and which really feel of think of Texas as the best of the best, and is really good. But there's other places which are also very good, right? But definitely, I mean, I'm happy people are very welcoming, which that was good, and it took a little more time to adjust as compared to Boston to residency, but eventually you adjust, you adapt, and that's what I did. Yep.
You talked about mentors, and I guess we all have those mentors in life, right? That either somebody maybe advised you to go to Texas. I don't know how do you ended up going to Texas, by the way?
So I probably Dr. Levi. He was one of my faculty at Tufts. He, I mean, the first reference I can think of Texas, I think it was probably from him. We were talking and we were pretty close. And he was like, well, what are you going to do when you finish? You want to stay in the US? Yes. But for example, in Massachusetts, I cannot practice because I don't have the DDS or the DMV from the US. So there's only several states where you could practice having only like a residency in the US, right? So Texas is one of them. There's a few more. So Dr. Levi told me, Texas is an option. The weather is more similar maybe to Spain than Massachusetts. The economy over there, it's pretty good. Taxes are good also. So, and he knew someone also practicing here, and they were doing, he was saying that they were doing great. So, so that was the first thought of Texas. Then within Texas, I said, okay, I'm going to focus Texas. The US is very big, so I'm going to focus in something, right? So I'm going to focus only on Texas. So then I said, okay, what I want to do, I want to stay in academia. So let's start with academia. What schools we have here? And then another of my mentors, Dr. Holly, also in the Perry department, knew a faculty in the Texas A&M in my current school. So so he sent an email and introduced myself. Eventually, I was able to interact. That's what we're talking about, contacts, right? So I was able to interact with them by email, schedule an interview. So I ended going to Dallas to interview Texas A&M, and eventually, eventually they got me. I was ready to go to Houston for interview. I was ready to go to the other schools for interview, to apply also for jobs here, but I was lucky enough to go for the first interview at Texas A&M, and I met Dr. Dickish, the chairman, and he hired me. And the first day, the day of the interview, he said, "You're hired." I said, "Okay, I'm done." And that was a big relief, because at that time, everything was so uncertain. After residency, the visa status, you don't know anyone. You finish residency, what are you gonna do? So that was a big relief.
What a big change, right? So the value of having mentors that people you can trust. And I guess that for somebody who doesn't have a network or is working on getting a network, what do you think they can do to grow their dental network and maybe eventually aid people that could potentially mentor them into opportunities?
I think definitely looking for mentors is important, but I think what mentors don't like, or in general, people don't like, is that people don't like other people trying to take advantage of them. So you don't want someone that comes to you just because you have contacts, or you know someone, or you're the program director, or you're a faculty. So you don't want people that really come to you because of who you are, because you may be able to facilitate them, or make easy a little bit, or ease their way to the program. So you really want to mentee people which really have a passion for what, in this case, periodontics, or passion for dentistry. You want people that really are devoted to achieving some goals, but because they like it and because of passion, right? So try to show that's the main thing, right? And show in person. I think send emails is it's simple. It's very simple to send emails, but I think you have to show up and spend the time. If you have to fly somewhere, but and meet the person, because as I said, meeting in person has a lot more value than on the phone, by email. So I think definitely, contact them. Hey, I've heard very good things from you. If possible, I would like to meet you, maybe shadow a day in your office, So I think that's a good way of getting started on meeting people for the men.
That's an excellent advice, showing commitment. It's really showing that you're willing to do what it takes with really without expectations, because I think many times we get a little bit anxious when we want something and we just show it maybe too quickly. But it definitely helps in a way, offering just simple help. And then in a way it becomes a relationship, because any mentor-mentee relationship, it's just like any other relationship. It's something that should grow organically. And you have opportunity to mentor a lot of people in your position right now.
Yeah, mentoring people. I think I'm still a little young to. I cannot give him as much as I would still, based on the experience. Definitely, I'm class literature review. So all the classes, I recommend them all the literatures. I have a couple of dental students that have come to shadow me. So I'm starting to really mentee people. But I think it's going to take a little more time until establishing, until seeing myself as a true mentor. Because, maybe it's because my examples of mentor, they were all older clinicians with more experience. So maybe I see myself still not ready. Maybe some people, these students, consider me as a mentor already, but I still, because my examples were a little older people, more experienced, more senior. So I don't consider myself still like a true mentor. But yeah, hopefully I am for someone, and one day I'll be also a true mentor.
I'm sure that in the way that people have impacted your life, you have been able to impact others already. I'm sure about that. From all your experiences and all your decisions, because I guess a lot of the things you decided and all others just ended up happening to you, right? From all of those events, which will be the one that you think is the most significant? Like, now that you look back and say, I didn't think that decision was that important, and look at what's happening right now, life changing. Is there anything that you could select?
Well, probably there's two. I mean, definitely the first one is getting accepted to residency in the US, because that's kind of the trigger of all the subsequent events, right? So getting accepted to residency was good, but also getting the position here in Texas A&M in the school here, also it gave me like security, a lot of security, and so getting here the position, and also recently I got the green card, so that's also a big thing. Also probably life changing also, right? Before the green card, you don't have that much power of decision, so you feel that maybe you don't drive 100% your life. You're depending on other people. If you don't have a green card, if you don't have permanent residency, you can get fired, and that's it. And then good luck. You probably have to leave the country. So once you have the green card, you feel that you're driving your life a little more safely, and you can take a little more, take more decisions. So definitely coming into the US in residency is one of the big things. Coming here to Dallas and getting hired in the school, and then probably getting the green card, those are key moments in my professional life.
And those are very powerful moments. I think, as you said, you feel like you're driving finally your life. You have some level of control, right? After that, it's especially with so much uncertainty, if you might call it that way, about the obstacles that you face when you move to the US, because we know it's challenging. You have the financial part. Speaking of the financial part, how did you overcome that? Did you end up getting along, or how were you able to support yourself when you came here?
So I had a loan from Spain. So that's, when you get a loan from a foreign country, foreign currency, then you have to change the money. So you start losing money. So ideally, you can get a loan from the US. Way better in my case. I was not, I didn't know anyone here. So a loan from Spain, then also money borrowed from my parents, my aunt, my uncle, my cousin. So all the family just bunched up and put some chip in. But as I said, everything is in euros, so everything had to be transferred here, like slowly, right? But then you start losing money, so it's like, oh man, I'm losing all this money. But that was the main thing, and finally, I was able to return most of it. So now I just owe to my parents, but they are like, just wait, we'll ask you whenever we need to. Like, okay, that's fair. But that's a big thing, and many And it also depends on the programs, how expensive they are, right? There's programs which are very, very, very expensive. There's other programs which maybe cost only 10 grand a year or even less. The current program here at Texas A&M is probably you can do your residency with less than 50K. In Massachusetts, in Boston, with 50K, you cannot even do a year. So, it's also important to choose what program you want to do or you can afford to do. But being foreigner is difficult, because I know some programs get discounts if you're in state tuition. Being foreigner, you don't get that. You have some loans, pretty recent loans in the US. As a foreigner, you don't get the student aid. So that was a big thing. But also it was big after residency, when you finish residency and looking for a job. That period of time is like, you drain your family, you don't have money anymore, and you have to look for a job. But you cannot be looking forever for a job, because the remaining of the money is that's it. That's what you have. So I put like a deadline on myself. I said like, okay, 1 month to look for the position. So I came here to Texas for the interview, and I didn't have an apartment anymore. I didn't in Boston. So I didn't have anything. I was just in Texas in an Airbnb, applying for the position here, maybe looking for dental offices to see if I could work. No money, and then when you get hired, you don't get paid the first month, right? So until at the end of the month. So that you have to survive all that time. But that was also interesting. But once you get your first paycheck, then everything feels more real and you feel relief, and that's it. But that was one of the main challenges. And maybe for some people, the language may be a challenge. In my case, I spoke English pretty decently, so in my case that was not a challenge. But I know some people which have had that problem, and that can be also a challenge. Yeah.
And you mentioned too, like depending on the place you go, like in some places people have some accents that are different. So maybe you feel like your English is good enough, but you go to this state where they have a very particular way of talking and you might not being understood. Or if you're in a place where they're not that used to foreign students, I think that could be another factor too, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I came here at Texas A&M for an interview, the chair is German, so it's pretty standard English. Then another faculty, she's Irish, so I was used to kind of European English. But one of the faculty was very Texan. So when I went to the room, we started talking. I was like, "What? Are you talking English or what?" I was like, I didn't say that, but I could only understand 50% of the words. So that was interesting. But yeah, so that was but in my case, as I said, that was not a big issue. That was good, but I can see for some people it may be an issue, and some programs require. Well, I think all the programs require TOEFL or another kind of exam with a minimum score to get in, which is understandable because you have to interact with patients. So it's understandable that you need to have a minimum level of English.
Absolutely. In your position right now on your daily activities, so what's a typical week for you? I know you do a lot of different things. So what a typical week, maybe before COVID or even now, will be for?
With COVID, everything is different. But yeah, so before COVID, on standard time, regular times. So I'm recently, in the last 6 months, I'm involved like 90% in grad. So most of the time I'm in grad area. So my main week is like 1 day a week. We are able to work in private practice. So that's good. We don't have faculty practice in the school, but in Texas we can work. Being a foreign trained dentist, you can work outside. So I'm working in different offices. That's on Fridays, and then the rest of the week. So we have two main classes: classic literature review on the Monday mornings, and then journal club, which is current literature, Wednesday mornings. So we have these two main like seminars. We meet with all the residents, several faculty, depending on the day there's 2 faculty, other days there's 3 or 4 faculty, and we review articles. Then I give some lectures, isolated lectures, like maybe once every other week. There's a lecture for grad on Wednesday morning before literature review, or I also lecture undergrad. That's usually Thursday mornings or sometimes Friday mornings. And I also lecture dental hygiene. So I give, let's say, probably like a lecture every other week on average between grad, undergrad, and dental hygiene. Then is these 2 blocks of literature review, and then the rest is supervise the clinic. And then I also have some office hours to just work on some admin stuff. Maybe now we're involved in a couple of research projects. So work on that. And then usually 8 to 5, but always, it takes a little longer. And if you have to work on lectures, make new lectures. Now, after the first couple of years was crazy doing lectures. You need to do a lot of lectures. They may give you old lectures from other, like from other faculty, but you have to adjust, make them from scratch. So the first couple of years, probably until year 3, it was a lot of new stuff. Now everything is a little smoother. You have to do less new lectures. So basically, I just review a little bit the lecture for tomorrow or for the day after, review, maybe adjust a couple of things that I think the women need to adjust, and give the lecture, and it's pretty straightforward. I was reading a book on this on lecturing, and it's true that the first time you give a lecture, you're kind of lost. The second time, a little better. So at least you need like 3 times to give a lecture in order to feel more comfortable. So now it's like I'm going to my 3rd, 4th, and some lectures maybe even 5 times. So now I feel more comfortable in giving the lecture and retransmitting everything that you want to really transmit.
I think that's a normal fear. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think that's something that we all experience, because as dentists, we really don't receive information on how to teach, right? We go to school, we go to grad school, we do all this training on how to be dentist, periodontist, prosthodontist, whatever it is. And then we're just like doing the floor teaching. Right? So from that learning curve, what piece of advice will you give to a young dentist that is thinking on teaching, or maybe thinking is not ready to teach? Because that's the other fear I remember feeling. I'm not ready to teach. Can I teach something? What will be some advice for those people that are considering teaching career?
Yeah, I think it's a little different if you're a little older, more experienced, or younger. So I think you should always must know your limits and acknowledge if you don't know something. But it's true that if you're an older clinician, if you say, if the student asks you something and you say, I don't know it, it looks like, oh, well, he's had all this experience. He doesn't know it maybe because it's a difficult thing or it's a very uncommon thing. But if you're a younger teacher, like in our case, if you say clearly, oh, I don't know this, they may think that the student may think, oh, maybe he's not prepared enough, he or she's not prepared enough, he's not good. So you have to be careful as a young teacher. What do you say? What do you do? Definitely, if you don't know, you don't know, right? But maybe you have to try to adjust in somehow, saying, okay, let's look this up together. Let's work this. Let's try to look confident. I think it's important to try to look as confident as possible. And probably the only way of looking confident is knowing your stuff. So definitely try to go over, in the case of perio, a big thing is perio classification. So you have to go over the periodontal classification, know it very, very well. And eventually, if you're teaching the dental students, since I did a residency in perio, or you did a residency with prosthodontics, so you will know more than them. So I'm sure even if you may not know exactly the answer, you can give them an answer which really will help them and will lead them to the final answer. But in the end, just know your limits, know very, very well, or as much as you can, your staff, and from there be clear and just go forward.
Great. Now that you are into academia pretty much, I will say 70% of your time, maybe more, how do you see the future of dentistry in the next 3 to 5 years with all these changes, like global changes that we're having? Do you see any future changes on both the education side of dentistry and the practice side of dentistry?
That's a very good question. And it's all guesses, I guess, right? Practice side, I think, since, when I'm practicing, I think everything is going relatively back to normality. We're definitely using all the masks, N95s, and all the measures. And I think it may put the standards a little higher, but always, I think dentistry, we've been always, if you do things well, you've been always using all the proper PPE. So all the adequate measures. So I think in the field of private practice dentistry is not going to affect that much. I know there's other fields may affect more. The other day I went to the hairdresser. They took my temperature, which is crazy. Wearing a mask, the glasses. So that's a big change for them. For us, everything is pretty similar. So I think after a couple of months, once patients, yeah, I still see some patients which have fear to come to a dentist, or if they don't have anything, an emergency treatment, they'll wait. So I still probably in the next couple of months, still everything is going to go a little slow, but eventually it's going to recover, and I think it's going to go to relative normality. Academia is a little different. We have to see what's happening. If we can go back to 100% of treatments, eventually we will. But all these lag, all these months that the school, and we've seen it in some schools, cutting faculty or cutting percentage of hours of the faculty have been working, because all these months, March, April, May, June, and probably until the end of the year, they won't get what they were getting before. So all this is going to be reflected. I don't know if in increasing tuition, definitely cut in faculty, maybe classes will be cut in the number of students. And I was hearing in some of the faculty people in the admin departments were talking maybe increase the length of the programs or some programs to make up for this lost time, at least increase just in clinical procedures, right? So get all the didactics, all the classes out of the way, and maybe increase 3 or 4 months of only clinical procedures. And I think that may be an idea. And I was even talking to some residents, and they felt that maybe that was right, because the last thing you want to do is do a residency, spend all this time, and not be prepared, right, to treat all those patients. So maybe by extending 3 months, this full clinical months, they'll be prepared for the real life after. So, but I guess we don't know. It's uncertain. I'm looking forward for the vaccine, and I hope, and I think that's going to change, everything once we get a vaccine. See.
Hopefully. I mean, I think I guess the positive side on one end is that after all this, nobody can say they don't know what Zoom is, right? So I think at this point, everybody, at least whoever had like some fear of technology or were like a little bit distant to all of these resources, they feel definitely more familiar, if not comfortable already. So how do you see any of this staying in academia or in teaching?
Yeah, that's good you said it. I mean, if I had known it 3 months ago, I would have bought stocks of Zoom and stocks of Peloton, because everyone is saying Peloton had Zoom, but I didn't know. Definitely, I think we're learning from this. Definitely, everyone now is comfortable using Zoom, or the 95% of the faculty are comfortable using Zoom, and I think it's a very good tool for some people. And even I've heard some companies are working will switch to remote. Someone that lives 1 hour away from their job, that's a huge saving of time. So I think this is going to stay here. The Zoom, the option of Zoom is going to stay here. Still, I think in-person teaching is of more value, but I think Zoom is a good tool to have in mind, to have in the, because it puts together people even though they are far. And as I was telling you earlier, we have 2 international students that are still waiting on their visa. So that's the only way we can really interact with them. I mean, I know them pretty well, but I have never interacted in person with them. So, well, only when they came for interview last year. But Zoom has really made us relatively close, and I think it's a positive and right. It's gonna be here to stay, and the good thing is that you can record the lectures, and students can go through them. Also, before you were able to record them with other means, but also with Zoom makes it easier. So definitely, that's a good point. I think we'll keep this.
And even thinking an international dentist that they feel that it's difficult to even grow their network. This could be an avenue for people to connect with people that are in other countries too, because now our people are more comfortable and willing to engage into maybe even discussing projects, or if you have a research of your interest, you could help someone. So a lot of people are more willing to try, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, 3 months ago, if you would have to have a meeting with people in other countries, you would be, oh wow, what should I do? Skype? Okay, Skype. Can we connect all in Skype? How it works now? In a second, you set the meeting in a second. So definitely,
Absolutely. It's an option. Well, I would like to ask you a final question. If you could share a piece of advice to an international dentist coming to the US like you did once and wishing to practice in this country, what would you tell them?
So first of all, you have to be convinced. You have to be really willing to do it, because it's not an easy process, and it's not a short process. It's not a cheap process, and whatever you expect, it's gonna be worse. Maybe more expensive, longer, more difficult. So you have to be committed. Actually, like a couple of days ago, I received an email from someone in Spain, asking me about, how can I do it to go to the US to teach? What can I do to find a job in the US? And there's not easy answer. Everything is like, okay, you have to be ready to leave everything behind and dedicate all the time to your main goal. And the main goal will start back home. I mean, most of the time, with the basis of how you create the goal will start back home, to spend the months or the years preparing everything, as we said, not meeting the right people, getting to know the system, because it's a completely different system. There's a lot of ways to get introduced into the country. I mean, they can hire you in academia if you are already in academia teaching, maybe, or you can go into residency, or you can go into the international dental program. Or you can go as a fellowship, and then from there you go. So definitely try to plan as ahead of time, plan as much as possible. The first step will be to get into the US, either as doing the DMD program, as a fellowship, as a residency. So once you plan, the first step is to be in the US. Once you're in the US, from there, definitely you want to be in the US in a longer program, or in a longer with some kind of visa which allows you to stay longer time. Once here, maybe you can plan a little forward, and because at the end, until you're in the US, you don't really know how everything works. So you plan as much as you can. Somehow you have to be in the US with a regular visa, student, working, whatever kind of visa, and from here you try to plan to stay longer in the US, and it's easy. Once you're here, it's easier. It takes time. It may not work the first time. You may even need to go. I know people that have to go back to their countries and then go back to the US. So, but eventually, I think if you want it and that's your goal, I think you will achieve it. Yeah, there's always going to be a little bit of luck involved. So always you have to have some hope, some luck, but definitely there's a lot of hard work behind with all the planning. And the more planning, the better. So I have to say, maybe I didn't plan as much as I would have liked to plan. I recognize that maybe I was lucky at some points, but there's moments that, at least in my case, that I was lucky and everything went one way, but I had been unlucky, everything would have gone downhill, and maybe I would be now in Spain, working in Spain. So which is okay, right? So yeah, you never know, but just fight for it, and in the end, I think we'll see.
That's a great advice. Well, thank you so much for your time and your insights. Do you have any final message? I know that you open your heart fully to really set your experiences and everything. Do you want to say anything else to the community out there? How can they contact you? How can they reach out to you if they have questions or if they want to connect?
Yeah, they can definitely connect through social media, through Instagram. Maybe I think you post the Instagram.
I will prepare everything. I'll post all of your contacts.
Yeah, my email will be also there. They can also email me. I think it's important to have support from the family or from people back home, and then support from people in the US or wherever you want to go. It's important to find the people to support, because by yourself it's very difficult to do this. So try to find people who you trust, and let them help you. But it's all about work, and yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.